Why Carol Burnett still refuses to watch this one episode she filmed in 1977. Carol Burnett made millions laugh for 11 years straight. Week after week, she stepped onto the stage, did the ear tug, and turned pain into punchlines. But in 1977, she did one sketch that made her entire crew cry. The episode aired once. Critics called it brilliant. Awards poured in. But Carol never watched it again. Not once in 47 years. She said it was too real. The sketch hit so close to home, she couldn't bear seeing herself in it. So what made America's funniest woman refuse to face her own performance? This is the story of the girl who grew up with nothing, became a queen of comedy, and filmed the one episode she could never rewatch. Carol Creighton Burnett was born on April 26, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas. From the very beginning, her life was surrounded by pain. Her parents, both alcoholics, were unable to care for her. Her father worked at a movie theater, but he couldn't hold a job for long. Her mother drank just as much and wasn't emotionally present. Both would later die from alcohol-related illness. By the time Carol was just a toddler, she had already learned what it felt like to be unwanted. The people meant to love her most had chosen bottles over bedtime stories. It was a lonely, unpredictable world, and Carol learned early on that laughter could protect her from breaking. When her parents fully gave up on raising her, Carol was taken in by her maternal grandmother, Mabel White. In 1940, they left Texas and moved to Hollywood. But there was no red carpet waiting. They lived in a single cramped room in a rundown boarding house, surrounded by other broken souls. Addicts, mentally ill tenants, people clinging to hope while starving on welfare. Carol and her grandmother survived on $20 a week, barely enough for food, let alone a dream. But Mabel gave Carol what she'd never had before, unconditional love. She was poor, yes, but she was finally safe. In the middle of that chaos, Carol invented an escape. She created a pretend twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wasn't. Confident, beautiful, always smiling. And Carol made her so real that even the other tenants believed she existed. She'd run up the fire escape, change clothes, change her hair, and reappear as Karen, charming and playful. Then minutes later, she'd return as Carol. The fact that these adults, many of them barely hanging on themselves, believed it says a lot about both Carol's acting skill and how much everyone in that house needed something joyful to believe in. Every Saturday, Carol and her grandmother would go to the movies. Tickets cost 25 cents for two, more than 10% of their weekly income. For those few hours, Carol left behind the peeling paint, the shouting, and the fear. On screen, life sparkled. Stars danced, people kissed, there was food, beauty, and order. But when the credits rolled, survival came back into focus. They couldn't afford toilet paper at home, so they'd quietly steal it from the theater bathroom. They weren't ashamed, they were desperate. Even at 7 years old, Carol understood what it meant to be hungry for more than food. One day, sitting in that darkened theater, she heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous Tarzan yell echo through the room. It hit her like lightning. At home, she began mimicking it obsessively, perfecting every pitch and rhythm. She had no idea she was training her voice, building the kind of breath control most singers take years to master. It was just a game, but it became a signature. That yell would later bring down audiences in laughter and applause during her live shows. By the time Carol finished high school, she had one dream: journalism. Her mother had always wanted to be a writer, and Carol felt obligated to finish what her mother couldn't. UCLA was the goal, but when the time came to enroll, she faced a brutal reality. She didn't have the $50 needed to cover tuition. That's around $600 today. For most people, it would have meant the end. Then something strange happened. A stranger whose identity she never learned stepped in and paid the amount. No strings, no explanation, just enough money to change her life. At UCLA, she planned to study journalism. But one elective theater class flipped her world upside down. In that room, something inside her clicked. She wasn't shy anymore. She wasn't poor or invisible. She was funny, loud, and completely alive. Her professors noticed it. So did her classmates. She could sing, act, and make people laugh in the same breath. Suddenly, Journalism looked too small for her. She switched majors. That risk paid off quickly. At the end of her freshman year, she was named Most Promising Newcomer in UCLA's theater program. It was more than a title. It was a prophecy. It told her she wasn't crazy for chasing this dream. Carol was just a college junior in 1954 working as an usherette for 65 cents an hour when her life took a strange turn at a party in San Diego. She wasn't there to celebrate. She was stuffing hors d'oeuvres into her purse to bring home to her grandmother. That's when a sharply dressed stranger approached her. He wasn't in showbiz. He was a millionaire shipbuilder. Carol told him she dreamed of going to New York to make it on Broadway, but couldn't even afford UCLA's $43 tuition. The man made her an offer that sounded too good to be true. $1,000 each for her and her boyfriend Don Soroyan. But he gave them 3 rules. Never reveal his name. Only use the money to get to New York. And if they made it, they had to help others do the same. With the $2,000 in hand, Carol and Don packed up and left UCLA behind. They headed east in 1954, even though Carol had never been further than Texas. They landed in the city and checked into the Algonquin Hotel at $9 a night. The money started disappearing fast. At one point, Carol broke down crying while making a collect call to her family, who begged her to come back. Then, right as she was about to give up, she heard a radio announcement. A hurricane named Carol was moving up the coast. She took it as a sign and decided to stay. In March 1955, Carol and the other girls at the rehearsal club put on a show and mailed out invitations to agents and producers. Big names like Marlene Dietrich showed up. That night, doors started opening. Her first big break came from something totally ridiculous. A love song about John Foster Dulles, the stiff, ultra-serious U.S. Secretary of State. It was a joke song, over the top and absurd. But Carol performed it so perfectly that it became her signature. She got invited onto the Jack Paar Show and then the Ed Sullivan Show. On January 6, 1957, she stepped out onto the Sullivan stage with her knees shaking. But by the end of her set, people were howling with laughter. In 1959, everything changed. Carol landed the lead in Once Upon a Mattress, a new off-Broadway musical that got picked up for Broadway. She played Princess Winifred, a loud, clumsy girl from the marsh who was completely unlike any fairy tale princess. The show exploded in popularity. She earned her first Tony nomination. On June 22, 1959, exactly 5 years after she got that mysterious loan, Carol and Don paid back the full $2,000. The millionaire never responded. He stayed anonymous to the very end. By then, Carol was earning $500 a week, which to her felt like hitting the jackpot. Then came the Gary Moore Show. From 1959 to 1962, Carol went from rising star to full-on television powerhouse. She won her first Emmy in 1962. Her cleaning lady character became iconic. But the real impact of that show was in what it taught her. Gary Moore's unrehearsed Q&A warm-ups inspired the live audience interactions that would later define the Carol Burnett Show. On September 11, 1967, the Carol Burnett Show premiered, and with it, television changed forever. Carol broke through a wall no one thought a woman could break. For 11 straight seasons, the show pulled in 30 million viewers every single week. That wasn't just good, it was historic. Time magazine even named it one of the 100 best television shows of all time. TV Guide placed it at 17. Variety ranked it 23. It was one of the first variety shows to feature live comedy skits in front of a studio audience. That style went on to inspire Saturday Night Live. And Carol Burnett became one of the first women to lead her own variety show. At a time when most of television was run by men, she changed the rules. During its 11-year run, the show won a jaw-dropping 25 Primetime Emmy Awards. Harvey Korman picked up 4 Emmys of his own. Tim Conway also won 4, 3 for acting and 1 for writing. Even the show's final season in 1978 went out with a bang, sweeping multiple categories. But behind the scenes, not everything was laughter. During the show's 7th season, Harvey Korman nearly walked away for good. Carol usually let things slide, but this time she pulled him aside and asked what was going on. He said, "I'm just not happy here," and slammed the door. Carol fired him. But over the weekend, Corman begged for another chance. Carol agreed, but with one condition. Monday morning, I want to see you skipping and whistling down the hallway at CBS. And that's exactly what he did. Then came Tim Conway. Conway was the wild card. He had a rule: never go all out in rehearsals. He saved his best bits for the live tapings. The most famous moment came during the Elephant Story sketch. As he rambled on, Carol, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke tried everything to stay in character. By the end, even Vicki Lawrence lost it. Moments like that became the soul of the show. Raw, real, and completely unscripted. But not every scene was funny. In 1977, something happened that shook Carol Burnett deeply. It came from one of the recurring sketches, The Family. She played Eunice Higgins, a woman weighed down by disappointment and crushed dreams. Normally, the sketch mixed comedy with dysfunction, but this time they took a risk. No jokes, no exaggeration, just pain. The sketch was called The Family, The Wedding. In it, Eunice believes that singing her feelings on a talent show will finally launch her to fame. Instead, the judges mock her. One of them was played by real-life game show host Alan Ludden. Carol played the role straight. No funny accent, no silly movement, and by the end, the entire crew was close to tears. When the episode aired, it didn't lose its punch. The camera pulled back slowly on Eunice's tear-streaked face as the lights dimmed. No music, no laughter, just heartbreak. Viewers were stunned. Critics praised it,